Rise Race the Future is a futuristic racing game from VD Dev. This dev team has actually handled several handheld ports of games that usually pushed visual fidelity, whether it was Drive 3er for the GBA or their DS exclusive Cop the Recruit. They've always pushed graphical boundaries of the hardware they developed for. So, is their latest game, Rise Race the Future, a worthy new racer for the market? Or is it a future not worth racing into? Let's find out. Rise Race the Future sets itself apart from other racing games in that the car you drive rides on both land and water. You will seamlessly transition racing between the terrains. Rise has three main modes to play through: Challenges, Championship, and Time Attack. Challenges is the main bulk of the game, as it is through here you'll unlock tracks and better vehicles. Challenges takes place throughout 8 seasons, each with 8 levels to choose from. Each level has 1 to 3 challenges to complete that actually help advance through the season, based on race tokens and fans earned. Some of these challenges range from staying in first place, drifting X amount of feet, never crashing, beat the track in a certain time, etc. Championship mode is more or less what you'd expect. You'll race through a set number of tracks and there are multiple circuits to partake in. Time Attack is pretty self-explanatory. Just race for record times, but it also serves as practice on those tracks. Now, Rise is about racing on land and water seamlessly, and I'll admit, initially I was kind of confused with what the game was trying to be due to the game's physics and handling. At first glance, the game does look like it should control like an arcade racer, but it is a little bit more on the slightly simulation style racing type. Now let me explain. The handling of vehicles is a little bit stiff, drifting just never felt that enjoyable, and the physics in general felt random at times. If a car taps you, you'll spin out of control and there's no reset to track button, which leads to frustration since the game's AI rarely lets you catch up after a single crash, and that's even on the easier difficulty settings too. The vehicles themselves just felt a little too weighty. Even when driving on water, it just felt kind of sluggish turning the vehicle. However, as I stuck with the game, I began to better acclimate with the game's mechanics. The further I progressed, the better the vehicles I got until I finally found one in particular that really made the experience more enjoyable. And this was the thing about Rise. First impressions were really not that great for me. I was almost ready to write this off a little bit too early, but as I kept playing, it started to all kind of click, and what I found was a very enjoyable racing title here. Track designs are very nicely done, with 4 different locales to race on and numerous track variations to tackle. When racing on land, there's asphalt, dirt, and snow to drive on. The game's physics do alter based on the terrain that you drive on, while seamlessly driving onto bodies of water, as I've mentioned. In terms of vehicles, each one has certain attributes such as power, grip, stability, and handling. The designs of the vehicles are cool and look really sleek. I do like that there's some customization as well, such as decal types, color variations, auto brake sensitivity, and even a boost type. There are a few different boost types to choose from, each providing a different method to fill your boost meter. These range from reaching past 78 miles an hour to fill up your boost meter, to drifting, to having 3 boosts for each lap. Adjusting the auto brake sensitivity will actually vary your mileage in terms of how much you'll enjoy the game as well. If you're the type of person that hates to hit the brake button, then set the auto brake up to high, and it does a pretty good job of actually being smart without slamming the brakes per se, but actually slowing you down enough to kind of let off the gas and help with some turns. Now, the game has been compared to, from the developers, to games such as Ridge Racer and F-Zero. I have to say, I really don't see the comparison here. A lot of people have even mentioned that they've seen similarities to this with like Ridge Racer, and frankly, while I may not have played Ridge Racer from the very beginning, I have played Ridge Racer since Ridge Racer 7 and Ridge Racer 3D for the 3DS, and frankly, those games handle significantly more arcadey than this does. They talk about drifting, and drifting in this game is definitely a little bit on the stiff side, as I mentioned earlier. Hitting the handbrake and the brake at the same time, or just the handbrake with the gas, it's just... You could drift, but it just never feels arcadey. It actually just kind of feels like I'm playing Drive Club in the future. There were some issues I had with Rise, aside from my initial weak impressions that were thankfully cleared up. First off, the menu UI is confusing. Normally you use the analog stick or D-pad to change certain options. In this, you use the shoulder buttons or hold the A button down and then move the analog stick or D-pad to change your selection. It just feels weird. Second, there is zero multiplayer to be found here. No local or online play. There's not even leaderboard support. For a racing game to have zero multiplayer capabilities is a complete shame. Third, while I may be a little spoiled by current gaming trends, allowing you to instantly reset on track or rewind, the lack of that is very noticeable here. However, it's noticeable mostly due to unfair AI at times. I feel like crashing a single time in a race will usually cost you the entire race, unless you're playing on the easiest difficulty setting where you may have more of a chance, but otherwise it's almost near impossible to catch up. You'll spin out and face the wrong direction and you have to quickly turn back the right way, but turning is already a little stiff, so you may as well just throw the towel in and restart the race. There were also times I flipped a car or flew off track and the game wouldn't reset me for almost 5 seconds. In a racing game where every split second counts, 5 seconds is almost an eternity to wait for a reset. It's these reasons that a reset back to track button should have been implemented. Visually, Rise Race the Future is a fantastic looking game. The dev team really put their resources on making a game that's visually appealing, and it really shows. The really sharp texture work, nice motion blur effects, stable frame rate where it's about 30 frames but never really drops at all, and a vibrant art style all make Rise a looker for sure. Cars also get dirty when driving on dirt or snow, which is a really nice touch. Lighting is also very well done with reflections coming off of the cars. Audio, on the other hand, is fairly generic. Vehicles sound good with nice engine sounds, boosting effects, colliding, etc. It's standard stuff that gets the point across. Music, though, is completely unmemorable and doesn't add to the immersion of racing at all. It's just generic rock tunes that are kind of just there and loop every 1 to 2 minutes, and you actually hear the audio drop for that split second and then start up again. Kind of reminds me of the old Saturn PS1 days. I'm all for nostalgia, but only if the music's actually good in this sake. Rise Race the Future is actually a solid racing game that really emphasizes the visual prowess of what VD Dev are capable of doing with the Switch. While the game does take some time to get used to, stick with it and you'll find an enjoyable experience to be had for sure. While there are several things holding it back, especially a complete lack of any multiplayer, racing fans will find a good amount to experience for the less than $17 price point. That's why I'm giving Rise Race the Future a 7.0 out of 10.